Hello, everyone. I'm Jordan Jace. I am the Director of Education for the New York State Archives Partnership Trust, and I do their education programming for the State Archives as well. My background is archaeologist, historian, turned classroom educator, and then I kind of fell into working with the archives, and now I'm a full-time education coordinator for them. I will give you a little bit of information about, sorry, there's a whole lot of things going on my screen at the moment. Some information about the program that we've just launched with the IMLS grant. And then also it's an extension of a grant that we got a couple of years ago to build our own education resource for primary sources through the New York State Archives and the Partnership Trust. So I'm going to share a little bit of that information with you as well. And hopefully you'll all be able to see ways that you can get involved and connect with educators and work with those in your region to make primary sources more available to students and educators, both K through 12 and college level. Okay, so IMLS, we put in a proposal in the middle of COVID to get money to expand the resources that we have on Consider the Source ny.org, which is the new education resource that we launched. It ended up being a little delayed because of COVID, but we launched it earlier last year. So March or April of 2021 is when we officially launched it. And so I'm going to show you a little bit about that as well. But with the IMLS grant, we decided to go the route of diversity and also developing collaborative knowledge networks across the state for educators to be able to connect with the curators and custodians of primary sources. I've been doing this work for about 12 years, trying to bridge that gap between the two professions. And I've noticed that no matter what we do, we get some teachers, they start using primary sources, but that keeping that network going and really building those relationships seems to be a sticking point. So the aim of this grant and this project is to figure out what those sticking points are and overcome some of those hurdles and break down some of those barriers so that we can really build these networks and get teachers communicating with those people that hold those resources. That's a little bit of the background. So the program goals are to create a statewide network with the key stakeholders to increase those use of primary sources in the classroom, and also to elevate the voices of historically marginalized communities in both the historical narrative and the K-12 curriculum. So, of course, all of us who work in the history professions and in education know that we're always working to give a more equal footing to everyone in the historical record. And there's lots of reasons why that's difficult. There's lots of challenges for that. But making it a priority here will hopefully get those resources into the hands of teachers and students so that it can become more a part of what they look at in every part of the social studies curriculum, and also in ELA classroom and other areas of K-12 curriculum. So the project is large. My boss was like, think big. What is it that you would imagine would be like the best thing you could be doing in this position? And so there's 7 components to what we're doing. The first is the network, and I'm going to talk about each of these in detail in the slides that are coming up. So there's the network, there's the institutes, there's the curriculum, which is a higher ed curriculum for pre-service teachers and pre-service librarians, archivists, and historians. So I'll talk about that as well. Elevating the voices of those marginalized communities. We know they're in the historical record, whether they're absent, and that speaks volumes in and of itself, or the records that are out there. A lot of them are in those smaller repositories. Community organizations have some of those records. So finding some of those records to pull into the curriculum and make available to teachers and students. Teacher-created learning activities. So I've had this question already a lot from repositories. Well, we've tried this before. We've tried working with teachers. We create things, and they never get used. It just kind of goes into nowhere. So I'm going to talk a little bit about there's funding in the grant. We're going to be hiring 4 teachers in each region, so 36 total, to each write 5 learning activities that will go up on Consider the Source. So I'll talk about that. teacher workshops. So we want to spread this out to all the teachers in New York. In the fall, and we're hoping to do this annually as well, is workshops for teachers to learn how to use these primary sources, to learn about what's available to them, and get them into their hands. And then the final piece is, since this is a federal grant, we needed to have a component to the project, which I think will be of great value when it's done, that makes it replicable in other states. So, more of a national resource. So we are creating a handbook through this process. So taking diligent notes in every step of the way and creating a handbook to make available to other states on how you build these networks and how you identify these diverse resources throughout your state. So that will be and we're going to promote it at national conferences. So National Council for History Education, and then some national historians, organizations and things like that, librarians. So we're going to get the word out there about the handbook and make it digitally available on the website. Those are the 7 components. So the network, so we thought, well, New York's a huge state, geographically diverse, demographically diverse. So dividing it into 9 regions is what seems to work the best, and I'm having a lot of success with that. So there's 9 regions, and in each region we have a team of 4 to 7 people that represent all of the stakeholders, the different professions that are stakeholders for this project. And so I meet with them monthly, and they're helping to develop the institutes and pull in the repositories in each region. So each of your regions has multiple contacts. We have a project coordinator, a collections coordinator, and an education coordinator at minimum in each region. And then we have additional people who signed on to help with the project. So in all collections and also in education. And they are passionate about this work. So I couldn't be more pleased with the teams that we've got across the 9 regions. They are diligently working to make this happen in each region. And those together make the statewide network. So it's teachers, school librarians, public historians, librarians of all institutions, organizations, archivists, and curators. So all those involved in the curation of primary sources in a professional capacity are part of this program and invited to join and take part. And of course, again, the overall goal is increasing the access to those primary sources in the K-12 classroom and the awareness of those records that are related to marginalized communities. So the Institute. So each region is going to hold an annual Institute for Diversity and Collaborative Knowledge. The first ones are taking place this spring. Registration is up on the website. So if you are interested in participating in the Institute, connecting with teachers, you have resources at your repository that you feel would be beneficial for teachers, or you're just looking to learn how to work better with educators, this is what the Institute is for. It's to break down those barriers. It's to figure out how best to get the professions working together. It's a day long, it's interactive, and best practices for identifying and making accessible historical records. There'll be a keynote speaker in each region to present information about the importance of elevating the voices of marginalized communities and how to best do that. So we've got, I think, a third of the ones secured, and then we've got other people who are interested. So each one will have a keynote speaker that will kind of give that extra, the historical content and some direction on how we bring these voices into the historical narrative and the curriculum. So the curriculum that's being designed for higher ed, we have 2 professors, one from St. Rose, one from the University of Albany. One's a historian, public history professor, and the other one is education professor. And they're working to build modules to make available to professors in those disciplines so that we can get these professionals before they hit the working world. So it'll be hopefully a part of their education at the university level in how do you work with the other professions. So educators will be learning about how to best work with historians, how historians work, how records are curated, what archivists and librarians do with the records, and the language of historical repositories. We all know that things are done a very specific way in the way that records are curated and made available. And so teachers often get intimidated by that process because they're not trained in that. So having, a module or two built into their pre-service training will help to break down some of those barriers. And then on the reverse side, you have the curators who don't necessarily understand how educators use the historical records. So giving them some information when they are in their undergraduate or graduate program will help also for them to better understand educators and what educators are looking for. So the elevating voices of marginalized communities. What do we mean by marginalized communities? I found this quote from a publication from the Oregon State Parks. And so historically marginalized communities are groups who have been relegated to the lower or peripheral edge of society. Many groups were, and some continue to be, denied full participation in mainstream cultural, social, political, and economic activities. Marginalized communities can include people of color, women, LGBTQ, low-income individuals, prisoners, the disabled, senior citizens, and many more. So many of these communities were ignored or misrepresented in traditional historical sources. And I think we can all agree through our education, not all of these are equally represented as you go through K-12 and then also into your college education in history and the like. So we want to discover best practices for identifying where these historical records are located and how to increase access for both teachers and students and the general public. So we have a 2-year launch of this program, and that's funded by the IMLS. And we've got money in that grant to help repositories identify and digitize historical records related to marginalized communities. So if you work in a repository and you have a collection that has some documents in it that you feel fit, we are looking for you to join us. What we would like is we'd like to be able to make these available to teachers on Consider the Source. So we'd be making only the ones that you as a repository agreed to, but making them available, obviously not in publication level digitization, but so that teachers can pull it off the website, assign it to their students for analysis, and bring those into the classroom. So that's what we're looking to do with the digitization portion of this. We're also working with the Library Council. So we're hoping to be able to make them also available on New York Heritage so that the general public also has access, and researchers have access to them as well. The teacher-created learning activities. So for the 2-year launch, we have money to pay 4 educators in each of the 9 regions. So 36 total. They'll each write 5 learning activities using historical records that are identified through this program. So if your repository has some records that we digitize, those teachers will have access to them to create the learning activities. They'll be inquiry-driven, primary source-based, aligned to the state standards, and ready for the classroom. And then they'll be uploaded to considerthesourceny.org, which I'll show you at the tail end of this presentation. And then what teachers are always looking for are these local primary sources. So what's nice about the regional approach is each region will have primary sources that are local for those teachers and students to be using, reflecting history in their backyard, as I like to call it. And I've taught with those, and I know that students are always very engaged when they see common street names and places that they know, and they realize that, hey, history happens here too. And it gives them a new appreciation for where they live in their community. And so those will be presented at that fall teacher workshop where teachers from all over the region will be invited to participate and learn. And then the teacher workshops are open to all teachers in the region. And it's designed to share primary sources and learning activities that are discovered and created through this program. It's going to model the inquiry process for those teachers and how to use those primary sources at all grade levels. And also model what it looks like to elevate those marginalized voices in the K-12 curriculum. So they'll be able to see that as well through those teacher workshops. And then hopefully bring them into their classroom, and it will also enable for the teaching of the civic literacy that the state education department is pushing now for high schoolers to get a civic seal on their diploma, and so they're more civic ready as they enter adulthood and voting and all of those things, make them active, engaged citizens. So those are the goals of the teacher workshop. And then, like I said, that handbook is going to be an instruction guide on how to build a statewide network similar to what we're doing here, with enough flexibility because every state doesn't have the same resources we have. Like the library councils are a huge component of this. We already have Consider the Source built, the online resource, so we have some things already in place. But we're hoping to create a guide that is general enough that any state could take parts of it and create a similar network and really get those professions talking and working together. Also, best practices for identifying and making accessible historical records for marginalized communities, and connecting those educators with those curators of historical records. So the website. I'm going to take you there now. What I want to show you is, I believe most of you are not educators. If you are, I'm hoping this will be helpful for you for using in the classroom. But for those of you working in repositories, what I want you to see is what's able to be done with those primary sources in the hands of teachers through a resource like this. If you're able to if you want to make those resources available and you're able to put them on here, they will appear just like any of the documents I'm about to show you. So this is the landing, the home page. If you just want to browse historical records without the learning activity component, click here. You can browse by topic, which is what the landing page is. You can also browse by region, primary source type, historical era. So if you browse by topic, hold on here. Lots of these are from the New York State Archives, but we also have some from other repositories throughout the state that have been added as part of other grants throughout the years. So for about probably 25 years or so, the State Archives has been getting grants to make primary sources available to educators. And let's see, this one here is from the town of Skodak. And it's a manumission. So we upload the primary source, whatever metadata we have to go with it goes over here. If there's an identifier, there's a spot for that. There's a spot for a description. This one doesn't have as much with it. It's whatever the repository provides. But it tells where it's from. And for cursive, I don't know if you know, well, most kids can't read cursive. I think we're even getting into generations of teachers that didn't grow up learning cursive. So we try to provide a transcript. So if you click on that transcript button, which was this one right here, so we do a page to page so that they can see the primary source, because it's important to us that they see the original record. So if there was multiple pages, we do the transcript per page, so they'd be able to page through each one and look at the transcript that goes with that page. It's an important component for teachers to be able to use primary sources for their students. If you scroll down, if there's an activity already created by a teacher for this, which there are, they appear at the bottom. So this is what the activity looks like for the teacher. And this is information whatever the teacher creating the learning activity wants to put, they put here. So any instructions for the teacher, how to use the resource, activity sort of thing, all can go in this teacher suggested instructions section. If you look at student view, this is what the student would see. So they can look through it, you can zoom in, so it has a nice zoom in capability. Whatever you want the student to know about it can go here. And then these are questions. So we have pre-populated questions that you can put with everyone, but a teacher can change these. So accounts are free. They just create an account. They go to my account here. I'll show you. It lists all the activities that are under that teacher. And so this is where they would be able to copy it to their account to use with their students. They can share it right to Google Classroom from here. So it makes it, we worked with teachers as we developed this to see what we could do to make it as easy as possible for them to bring primary sources into their classroom. I just wanted you to see that they're able to change these questions, delete them, add new ones, whatever they want to do for their students. And then their students are able to save it as a PDF and submit it to the teacher directly. So it really makes it easy for the teacher to bring the primary sources into their students, to the classroom. And then they can also browse by learning activities. So if they wanted to look for just documents that have learning activities, they could do that here. And again, this has similar search categories, but they can also search by grade level, activity type, thinking skills, things that go along with the New York State framework, New York State social studies framework. So, and then if they have things that they just want to create, they can build their own from scratch. So we have different types that go along with the different social studies practices. And this one is just a basic interpreting the evidence. So, excuse me, just analyzing a document, and we make it as easy as possible. So it's just clicking boxes and adding the primary sources. So, as you can see, we've got over 2,000 documents loaded up now, and that's growing all the time. And I think over 1,200 learning activities to go with them. So I think for the website, I mean, I can answer questions about the website as well. So, but I just want to make sure I get to this last part. For you to get involved in how you can join, you can sign up for our newsletter on the website, on the landing page. You can sign. I'll show you all that on the website as well. You can attend a regional institute. I'll show you how to do that. And if you can't attend the institute, but you'd like to contribute digital images to the program, you can either reach out to me. I can give you the email, and also your regional representative for the project. So let me take you back to the website and show you how to do that. Go to consider the source. Right here is the Diversity and Collaborative Knowledge Program. Here's where you sign up for the newsletter. If you click on Institute, these are all the regions. If you're not sure which region, you can ask. We try to follow as best possible the library councils. It seemed to make the most sense, because if you're already a member of a library council, you probably would want to work in that region. So I tried drawing lines initially, and then I was like, let's just do the library council lines. It gets very kind of confusing when it gets the BOCES for the school districts, which is how we're inviting teachers to the institute, because those lines aren't as clean as the library council lines. So, but we're flexible, so whichever one makes the most sense for you to attend. These are the different regional institutes and when they're taking place. And it's a constant contact registration. So when you click on register now, they'll take you to the page to register. And then you'll be all set. If you want to email me, my email is jordan.jace@nysid.gov. And so you can reach out to me if you have questions or want to know more. I guess I can open it up to questions. Usually if I get questions, it kind of takes a while to answer questions about the website. So.
If people want to put any questions in the chat.
So yeah, so actually I'm looking, there's a question about if you already have digitized resources, that's fantastic. So we're kind of thinking this in different levels. So there's the places that don't have a place to put digitized resources and don't have the money to digitize, that would need that kind of help. But if you already have things digitized, and you would like to add them to consider the source, that would be great too. So the best way to do that is, because if you create a learning activity, it only shows up on the learning activity side. But if you're able to send us, and I can provide, if you reach out, I can provide a Dropbox or a Google Drive for you to put it in. If you can give me digitized JPEGs, would be TIFFs or JPEGs, I can convert them to what we need for consider the source and upload them to the browse side. So I would need your metadata, whatever information you want to go along with that primary source. And then we can put it on consider the source. Absolutely. So yes, so, and again, we're just starting this process, but we're following pretty much what New York Heritage does. So they've helped me out a little bit. So we have their metadata sheet that you can use. And I think they only have a few pieces that are required, but there's spaces for all the other information that you might want to include. So I can make that available, as well as then I can give you the link of where to upload digitized images. So I was just looking at a question about types of primary sources. So it's open to anything. So it doesn't have to be specifically local history. It can be American history or even global history, if that's what you have. And secondary sources, we don't really have a spot for those, but we absolutely we can link to them if it's part, like if we have a primary source, but there's a secondary source that supports that, we could link to the secondary source if it's available online. I'm trying to think what did you have in mind for secondary sources, I guess. And for this particularly, we're looking for those related to those marginalized communities. Not that we won't accept other things. Obviously, we are looking to consider the source as a resource. So anything related to local, state, national, global history that is suitable for the K-12 classroom is welcome.
Yeah, I mean, we could actually link some things from the Novel New York databases, since everyone in New York State would be able to access those. Secondary sources.
Yes.
Like from, so that'd be like Britannica.
Oh, so like an encyclopedia sort of thing, or even books written about different topics and things. Newspapers. So yes to newspapers. Actually, Diana has a set of newspapers that we are going to be using, and hers are from an African American community in her county from World War II. So they provide a very different perspective on the news during that time period. But definitely newspapers, and I like newspapers because it's important to teach teachers how newspapers are a primary source. So they're not necessarily a primary source for a specific event, but they're a primary source on how the media was covering the specific event, or it depends on what section of the newspaper you're in. But so they are a good source to use with teachers, particularly if they offer a perspective that isn't as widely known or available in the classroom. So the best way to partner, that's what I was going to show you, was the network. Let me just, I knew there was one other thing here. If you go to the network here on the website, you'll see this is by region. And so the project coordinator is listed. If you click on their name, it's their email. So it'll bring up whatever email program you typically use with their email already pre-populated. So you can contact the people in your region. That's a good way to get involved. If you want to contact me, you can. I would say if you want to find a teacher that wants to attend, that would be great. Or if that teacher feels comfortable with primary sources already, like if you've already worked with them or you know that they're interested in doing this type of work. However, if you just want to partner with us, we're going to have teachers attending all of the institutes, so you can also connect with teachers at the institute and through the network. So we're working on the best way to get everybody connected within each region. I'm looking into private Facebook group as a possibility. I'm looking at a couple different options, but a way to get everybody talking and communicating with each other. But definitely reach out to your regional project coordinator. I think would be the best start to getting involved in the project. I tell you, Find a Grave was one of the most amazing things I ever found when I was doing lessons for students, because we were doing Civil War and we were looking at Civil War soldiers through the town clerk records. And a lot of them you could do the Find a Grave and you could actually find where they were buried and things like that too. So those types of secondary sources I think we would offer as like in the historical background portion of the historical context as additional resources for the teacher or the student to use as they're analyzing the source, for sure. And I think a lot of that secondary information, if you wanted to make that available with the document, would be best put in that historical background in the learning activities section. So you don't have to create the teaching activities. So if as a repository you have items that you want to contribute, I know most non-educators don't feel comfortable creating the learning activities, which is fine. So if you want to contribute the primary sources and the information you have that goes with them, then we will have the teachers hired, and I also have 2 interns that are hired through this that can create those they're teaching students, so they're in the graduate program studying to be social studies teachers. So we can have them create the learning activities using those resources. And by all means, if you feel comfortable, if you have a teaching background, or if you understand it and you feel comfortable creating a learning activity, which I don't think is really difficult, but a lot of people feel like they're not prepared to do that, which is fine. But you're more than welcome to create learning activities. You just create an account, and if you didn't put it on the browse side, you can upload primary sources to your learning activity that aren't on the website. So you could do that as well.
I think one of the cool things about this grant is kind of the possibility of, hooking up educators with their local repositories and kind of building those relationships and hopefully having the educators help create some learning activities for documents that relate to the local area, which should grow the use of those local depositories and get kids engaged in learning. So
yeah, and that is the goal. And then I just saw a question about useful in other regions. Absolutely. So if I'm a teacher on Long Island and I'm teaching about the Erie Canal because that's in all the curriculum for New York State, then a teacher in Buffalo has used some of those primary sources from a repository in Buffalo about the local impact of the Erie Canal, or a business that, was a part of the canal or whatever it could be. That can be used by the students, for the sake of argument on Long Island, to learn about the Erie Canal and its impact using local primary sources. So it's useful, not even statewide. I mean, a lot of our resources, even up until this point, there were teachers in Florida using, resources from what we had to teach the Erie Canal or immigration and different topics like that we have a lot of resources on. So, I mean, their uses are endless, really, for all the different topics and how they fit into U.S. history and even global history. I mean, we have a lot of things on World War I and World War II about, biochemical weapons and, gas masks and things like that, gas attacks and things like that can be used to teach on the global history as well. Well, absolutely. I mean, so we'll be the ones that are offering teacher workshops, but the CTLE credit is offered through whatever local BOCES, regional BOCES we're working with, and then the teachers who create the learning activities will be presenting what they've created at the workshops. But if we have someone, an educator from a local repository that would like to be involved in the teacher workshop, that would be very welcome. I mean, talking about what you have for educators and the context and things like that would be great for the professional learning. I think the other part of the thing that's so great about this project is, so when I proposed it to IMLS, I proposed it as a learning project. So not only are we offering these things, but we are also looking to learn from them. So when we get the teachers together with the curators and they're working and communicating and collaborating, we're going to be learning a lot about where those disconnects are and where the misunderstanding is and why it's hard to make those connections. And I think we'll learn better how to make it easier for the groups to talk to professions, to talk to each other and work together. So I think that's one of the things I really like about the project. And I know initially some of my regional teams were like, well, how are we doing this and how are we doing this? And do you already know how to do it? And like, well, part of this is learning how to do all of that, best practices for working together. At the same time, I think we're going to find a lot of great resources. I know there's a lot of great primary sources out there in these smaller repositories that don't necessarily have the means or the connections to make them available on a broad scale. And we're hoping to tap into some of those through this project as well. So the school districts that aren't connected to BOCES tend to be the big five, I think. Diana, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the urban districts. So
and even the big five, they can still in this kind of project, they could still register through their BOCES, through any BOCES.
Yeah, and we're doing a good job, I think, of making sure that they are aware of the project and how they can participate. So, and it's important to us. So we've got people from Buffalo City Schools, people from Syracuse City Schools. I think we've got a couple from New York City that are interested in signing up. So the urban districts are especially hard hit with COVID. So they're really struggling with substitute teachers. So getting their teachers out of the classroom and into professional learning has been a little bit of a struggle with this project, just given the timing. But we are managing to get some of them involved. So it's very important to us to make sure we've got them on board as well. And
for the Metro New York region, we're partnering with Teacher Center to do the CTLE, not one of the BOCES. And actually our institute's going to be on a Saturday because we thought that would be a good way to get away from the substitute teacher problem.
Yeah, so the New York City one is going to be at Francis Tavern in Midtown Manhattan on the 14th of May. So we're hoping that we can get teachers because it's on a Saturday there for sure. And I think we had a partnership with New York Historical Society to do something prior to COVID, and everything shut down. We had something scheduled actually for, I think, April of 2020. And so when everything shut down, that all went away. So no, we're looking for repositories to partner with throughout the state because we want to keep this going. That's the other part of this. This isn't just a 2-year program that's done. This is something that the Archives Partnership Trust will sustain past the point of the end of the grant. So we're hoping to have annual institutes and annual teacher workshops associated with this program and continue to find more of those resources to make available to teachers and bring more teachers into the network. Because the more I think we reach and get involved in the network, the more sustainable it is over time.
And I think it's a great opportunity too for our public libraries in the state that have great historical document collections to kind of be involved too.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I know that, and I think that's where this idea came from for me is I work with teachers extensively, and I also work with repositories extensively, and I hear it from both sides. Well, I'd love to get more primary sources, but I don't even know where to look or how to access them. And then I hear from the repositories, we have lots of stuff, and we put them together, and we take them down to the school districts, but nobody's using them. And so this is an answer to that question, how do we make that happen? And hopefully through this program, we just progress a little bit farther forward in making these collaborations happen and making them successful. And the other part of the Institute is teaching repositories what teachers need to have come with those primary sources so that they feel comfortable using them with their students. Because that's another big part of it is teachers feel like they don't have enough of the historical background. They don't know enough about how the primary source fits into what they're teaching. And so I think if repositories can better understand how the teacher is going to be using it and what they need to feel comfortable using it, that those things will come along with the primary sources. Because I think there's a lot of that information is there. It's just like, what information do they need? It's kind of picking apart those pieces. So. And so, yes, we're already mining what's already in New York Heritage. So one of my interns currently, while we're in the planning stages for the Institute and gathering documents, he is going through New York Heritage and he's putting together a spreadsheet for me and identifying primary sources related to marginalized communities already in New York Heritage, and then identifying the region that they go with, and then giving me a link so that I can go back. So when we are working with the teachers, we can provide them access to all of those already digitized records as well. Good question. So I think the other thing is, don't hesitate to reach out. So, I mean, we're looking for curators of historical records to partner with each region and work with the educators. So if that's something that is part of what your organization wants to be doing, this is a perfect program to get involved in. So don't hesitate. Don't think, oh, maybe we don't have anything, and just reach out, and I'm sure there's ways that will be valuable to the program, and you will find value in working with the teachers for sure. Because the other thing we have is we have the Student Research Awards. We run that for the state. So I don't know how many of you have heard of that, but that's for grades 4 through 12, and it's for students to do local primary source research and create a project. It can be anything: research paper, documentary, exhibit, whatever. And they submit it to us by July 1st of every year. And they need a mentor. So someone in the community, either a teacher, a librarian, a historian, someone at a repository, to help mentor them as they do the project. And then there's cash prize for the winners. And everybody who meets the basic requirements gets a certificate of participation. So that's another great way to get the younger generation involved in using your resources and understanding the importance of local history and these local historical resources. So yeah, any way you want to get involved and want to work with us for Consider the Source and contributing documents, just reach out. We don't have a set way that you have to participate. So we don't have you don't have to do this, and this. It's very open and flexible. So you just let us know how you want to get involved and participate, and we'll find a way to work with you, because that's what I want this to be, an open thing where it's just providing access to the teachers and the students. So that's what we're working for here. Well, thank you all for attending, and I hope that you found it helpful and informative, and I hope you're excited about participating, because we would love to have anyone and everyone involved. I know the teachers and students really do appreciate it when we can find a way to get them in there.